I was at the time I was a hospice nurse in Mesa, Arizona. I worked in a 10-bed adult um, end of life facility, and I lived in Phoenix, and it was about a 25-mile drive from Mesa to Phoenix. And the freeway I-60 was torn up for years. They were widening it, and they would widen it and finally get it done, then decide to widen it again. It just took forever to widen. And the nurse that was replacing me was a little bit late, so I didn't get out on work on time. So it just ended up, I was at the absolute best place I possibly could be to have seen the Phoenix lights. So I'm driving down I-60 and everything's torn up. It was dirt. There was no pavement at all. And every time I came up to an overpass, I had to exit the freeway, drive up over the overpass, and then get back down on the freeway, go about a mile, and kept exiting and because of the construction going on, which really slowed things down. I was probably around Tempe, which is between Mesa and Phoenix. I don't remember the exact exit, but I got off the freeway and there was this huge mound of dirt from the construction site. Someone said later on I probably was supposed to go around it, but I ended up going on top of it. So a freeway street lamp, which is much taller than like a neighborhood street lamp, it was maybe just a couple feet over my head. There was one right behind my right shoulder. And I'm up on this top of this mountain of dirt. The nearby houses, I could look down and see the rooftops. I wasn't way high, but I was above rooftop high in elevation. And as I'm getting ready to go down this mound of construction dirt, I look out the corner of my windshield, and there is this massive boomerang shaped thing floating in the sky coming towards me. And it was so clear because Phoenix is huge, and there's all these street lights and all the lights going on in the ambient light of Phoenix shining up. So this craft, which many people just saw the lights, I saw the whole craft coming towards me because of the glow from Phoenix, and it's just kind of just taking its time, meandering, coming towards me. So I slam on my brakes. I get out of my truck. I still have my headlights on bright and the street light right behind me. And I'm just watching it just take its time and come up on me. And I notice a lot of people say that the Phoenix Lights was a sharp V shaped craft. It was totally boomerang the way I saw it. And maybe that's from the angle that I was. It was very low in the sky and it was coming up closer and closer and closer. And underneath it, there was multiple spots that looked like there was lava dripping out of the whole bottom of the craft. It looked like liquid fire. And as it got closer and closer, I focused on this dripping lava substance coming out of it, the one that was closest to me, because that stuff looked really hot. And I was thinking, should I get back in my truck? Should I get behind the truck? Is the gas tank going to blow up? Am I going to burn? What's going to happen? And I pretty much just stand there transfixed, staring at this craft coming up to me. The very tip of the left wing was probably about 4 feet away from me. So if the craft fell down, I could take like 2 steps and kick the tip of the left wing. And the left wing, again, other people describe it as a V with a point. It was rounded horizontally and it was rounded vertically. And I really couldn't see the sides, but with the glow of the street light and with my headlights, I could clearly see the material. I don't know what it was made out of. It was like a gunmetal gray. It reflected a little bit of light, maybe about 20% of light. And other than that, it was like a flat matte finish. And as it was coming up towards me, I'm focusing on the nearest light, which is a canister. It's an opening in the bottom of the craft. It's not like a flat bulb. And this stuff that looked like lava, orange crush orange, was pouring down in multiple streams. And it would drip down. And as it would drip, it was thick. it would kind of stretch. And where it would stretch, it would turn from orange to yellow. And it would slow down, slow down, slow down, and form a big drip, kind of hold it for a couple seconds, and then go back up into the opening of the craft while more streams were pouring down. Some's pouring down, some's going back up. And it's like if you boil water and the water, you know, splashes out of the pan and kind of goes up in the air and stops and falls back down in the pan. This stuff, it wasn't like it sucked back up into the opening. It looked like it fell up. It like poured down and fell up. And it's just stream after stream after stream. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get burned. There's this orange glow around and even on me. And, but there was no heat. And I thought, well, maybe I'm okay. There was no wind. It didn't blow any dust in my face. It had no odor. I remember kind of checking my lips to see if there was any burning or anything. There was no taste. There was nothing. And the other openings in the craft, which were much farther away, because I estimate this thing from wingtip to wingtip at least a mile wide. It was huge. And that stuff was dripping down too, but it was much farther away. It was dripping down out of every opening. And I'm assuming that's where every light was. I can only tell you really what I saw, which I focused on the one closest to me for my own safety. And um, again, with that street light right behind my right shoulder and my brights of my headlight on, I could see the whole bottom of the craft, and it had like thumbprint oval indentations. And they were probably, maybe a couple feet oval, going from the very tip of the wing as far as I could see towards the middle of the craft. Finally, it just got it was so big, I lost sight of the indentations. But there was thousands and thousands of oval indentations all over the bottom. And some people say it's like a hologram or something like that. People say all kinds of things, what they think it was. But as it moved over, the headlights and the street light cast shadows in these indentations, as did this orange, like lava stuff dripping out. It gave off an orange glow. And as the craft went over my head, the shadows changed because the light's coming at a different direction. So it's not like it was like a picture or a painting, or a hologram like that. The shadows changed as it went overhead. And I was so close, I felt very confident I could hit it with a rock. And I'm on this, construction site, and there's rocks all over. And I thought, ooh, I wonder what it would sound like. I'm a guy, that's what we do. We throw rocks. And I almost bent down to pick one up. And I thought, is it paper? Is it going to tear? Is it going to make a ping sound? Is it going to blast? I mean, in the air, who knows what it's going to do? And then I got to think, there might be some consequences to this. So I decided not to hit it. I'm going to guess I was about 30 feet underneath it. And that is darn close. It just went over housetops. It was very, very low. And, and then as the craft just floated, went right over my head. Behind it, it looked like a multicolored layer, rainbow, bright, glowing mist. And it started out very thick and came to a point, almost like a flag. And it looked like a flag out of Disneyland. It was actually pretty, all these different multicolors and sparkly. And it waved like a flag, like a fishtail, and went right over my head. And I was thinking, what's this? I'm a nurse. So, I'm thinking of my eyes. My eyes aren't burning. I don't feel like radiation. I felt safe. I didn't feel like I was in danger. And when that mist went over my head, it was like the most incredible feeling of gratitude. That's the best way I can put it. It was like my soulmate, the other half of my spirit was in there. And they were like flying over me and just saying, "Hey, just wanted to say hello." Um, I didn't hear words, I didn't hear voices. It was this incredible feeling of well-being and love and appreciation and glad you're here and just touching in and take care. And then it just went out of sight. And I stood there probably for about 10 minutes and watched it go farther south in Arizona and just cried my eyes out. And very often when I talk about this, I cry. It that incredible feeling of well-being from that moment, and that's been 27 years, has stuck with me every single day since then. My personality changed. My friends noticed a change in me and my coworkers. And though I'm a hospice nurse, so you got to be a nice person to be a hospice nurse. I just became a better person. And I would have moments where, especially driving and someone's driving too slow or they're in the wrong lane, and I used to honk. And um, since that moment, I've never honked my horn in over a quarter of a century. I let people get in line in front of me at the grocery store. So, though I was a nice person, I became a much nicer person. And that has stuck with me through my entire life. And every single day, multiple times a day, I relive seeing that craft. And more than what I saw, and it was an incredible piece of machinery. It was huge. There was no bolts, there was no screws, there was no rivets, there was no seams. It was one complete piece of material, at least the bottom. I really couldn't see the sides, with all those little indentations. I have no idea who built it. I don't know where it's from. I don't know who had their foot on the pedal. I don't know anything about that. It was absolutely, I don't know where you would store a craft that big. It was um, it was like a considerate piece of machinery. It didn't blow wind on me. It didn't gas me out. It didn't, you know, uh, rupture my ears. There was absolutely no sound. If I didn't see it, I wouldn't have known it was there, and except maybe for that feeling. And I try not to read into things much at all, but I'm a feeling kind of person. And I think that's what got me into nursing 42 years as a nurse. Um, that feeling beyond what I saw, just absolutely, it was like hitting the lottery. And I felt as if something in my head moved about a quarter of an inch, like like something just moved a little bit, realigned or something. And I've just had nothing but absolute peace ever since then. And I live alone and I sit around the house and I catch myself just smiling. I'm just smiling and happy for no reason. And I, I was happy before, but it's like a joyous gratitude state ever since. And of all the people I've talked to that have also seen the Phoenix lights, and being here in Phoenix, this, this is a nest of them. Nobody had an experience like that. And I know a lot of people had positive, um, it was all positive for them, but I not talked to anybody that absolutely it changed their personality. And did the craft do something to me? Did I do something to myself? I have no answer. But for whatever happened, I am so grateful. I'm grateful for what I got to see, and I'm grateful for who I became because of seeing the Phoenix lights. And I was talking to Dr. Lynn Kitai, who's done books and a documentary on this, and she's doing a survey. I think she's talked to like 1,000 people that saw the Phoenix lights, and she was saying that some of the people are coming up with things that happened in their childhood that they completely forgot. But when the Phoenix lights went over their head, they're remembering near-death experiences and visitations and things like that. I didn't have that. It's just this incredible feeling of joy. And what a marvelous experience that was. That's my one and only UFO that I've ever seen. I came upon another couple non-human entities over the years, but that was my one craft. And I sat on this stuff for so long because I didn't know anything about MUFON. I didn't know where you went to talk about something like this. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I found out that here in Scottsdale, Arizona, every year they're having an annual event where they commemorate the Phoenix Lights. And I found out our local state museum has a permanent display and a UFO, the Phoenix Lights UFO, that lights up and you walk underneath it. That was just really neat. So that was my Phoenix Lights.
Oh, that's awesome. And if you're only going to have one experience with a UFO, I think that's, the one to have. And I could really, I feel like I can tap into the joy that you're talking about as you're explaining it, you know? And that's really cool. Like I used to be really interested in the nuts and bolts aspect of this stuff, but the more I've explored it, the more I'm interested in, what are the spiritual views of these creatures, beings? And it sounds like what they're doing is essentially carpet bombing Phoenix with like love, ultimately.
That's what I got out of it. Um, and everybody, again, I've not talked to anybody that had a negative experience, though they didn't seem to have as intense of an experience as I did. And is it me? I don't know. I don't know. And there was a guy that I just recently talked to, and he saw it about 4 minutes before I did. He was farther north up. And it was interesting. I am the only person I know of that saw the lava dripping down and going back up in the ground. No one else describes that. They'll describe an orange and yellow swirl. But I was talking to this guy, and he was right under one of the canisters, one of the openings. And he said when he looked up, there was a huge tube in there, and he saw what looked like lava starting to spin way up inside the craft. He said it was spinning like a cotton candy machine. So that's the only other person I've talked to that described anything like the lava dripping down. But last year I met a man. I talked to him, and in 1997 he was in the Canadian Air Force. He's now a Canadian private pilot, and he said on March 13th, 1997, the exact same night in Canada, he saw a boomerang craft with lava dripping down from it, exactly the way I described it. And he said he couldn't report it. And he still can't come forward because he's still a pilot. And it's like, what's that about? Was there another one the same night somewhere else? I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe they hit like 10 different cities at once or something.
Who knows? From the opening was farther away from me because I'm right under the wingtip, but I could see a little bit up into the opening. And so maybe about a foot or so, a couple inches inside the opening, there's a silver tube inside the opening, like a lining. And then that's where all this stuff poured down. And it would just form thick drips. And it was like an upside down lava lamp. So and it was producing its own glow. I know on a lava lamp you got the bulb in the base, and the lava stuff kind of reflects the light. This stuff was actually glowing. I mean, there was orange all around me, and I'm sure I looked orange too. I kind of looked down. It's like, what's this? And I checked myself for several days after that to see if there's any radiation burns or anything. Absolutely nothing, but a joyous state. And the next day when I went back to work, and again, I'm a hospice nurse, so you can't be too jolly at work there. But yeah, I was just glowing, and I was telling everybody, that would listen, everything that I had experienced. What an incredible experience that was. Yeah. Do you have any answers? What do you think it was?
Well, I mean, it sounds like it was some kind of extraterrestrial race, probably not human. I think some people think that it was like a human craft, like one of these top secret programs or something. But from what it sounds like, the way you're describing it, that's probably, if there are no nuts and bolts on it, then it's probably not human. And Yeah, I mean, they were probably doing exactly what we were talking about before is, activating human consciousness or something like that. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine,
Yeah,
but that's a good theory, right?
yeah. I mean, I don't feel like I've had any further communication from them. And I know some people are having all kinds of abductions and things, and I don't feel I was abducted. But it's just this constant feeling of joy 24 hours a day for over a quarter of a century. And I would think that if it was me doing something to myself and because it was incredibly beautiful and massive and gentle and considerate and just went right over my head. I would think that would wear off after a while if it was something that I did mentally to myself. I really feel that there was a connection. And again, I'm a feely person and I just felt it. I was so open to it. I can, I don't want to read into it. I saw images and, but was that me? I don't know. I want to keep everything as factual as possible. So I'm just going to describe the craft and the feelings. But a couple years later, I was working at a different place and we had a social worker there and the craft went right over his head too. He was in North Phoenix and was stopped at a red light and had his windows down because it was a nice day and was listening to the crickets and there was a car stopped next to him and that guy had their window down and he was listening to the song that that guy was listening to on the radio. Well, the craft came from behind him, so he didn't see anything until it passed over his car and then went farther down south. And as he's sitting there, all at once, he said everything went silent. The crickets stopped. The car engine, he couldn't hear it. He couldn't hear the radio. And he was wondering, what happened to all the sound? And right after that, he said he thought it was a huge cloud. And that was the craft went right over his car. And after it passed the front of his car about 10 or 15 seconds, all at once he could hear everything again. He could hear the crickets and the engine and the music. So was the craft absolutely silent or was it able to kind of blank out sound? Maybe it was loud and it muffled it. I don't know. That was his experience. But he didn't see this flag of colorful mist. And I've only heard one other person who saw that. And it was when this mist went over my head. Now, right after the craft was gone, the trailing mist, that's when I got that feeling, that incredible hello, I love you, David. That it just, I was bombarded with positive, wonderful feelings from this craft. And this other guy in Prescott, and he did a computer generated, um, I don't know if you've seen it before, a sighting that he did that he saw. So he probably saw it about 30 minutes before I did. And he saw the exact same thing I did with this. It looked like a flag out of Disneyland. It was so pretty, just waving like a fishtail. And I could send you the link for that. I don't know if you don't edit, maybe you could add it to or something later on.
Sure.
Um, he's deceased. Unfortunately, I didn't get to talk to him, but he and I are the only people I know of that saw that. And he was looking right up into the canister. And again, when I saw the orange crush orange, lava stuff dripped down, and when it would stretch, it would turn yellow. He was seeing orange and yellow swirling up in the canister. So, was it dripping down? And just from his viewpoint, he could, that's all that he could see. So to see the tip of the left wing, I had to look directly up. But to see the rest of the craft, and I was probably about 30 feet underneath it, I didn't even have to raise my eyes, or I didn't have to raise my head. I just had to lift my eyes just a little bit. It was like this. So I didn't have to look up. Other people were looking up. I'm looking sideways. I'm horizontal to it. So I saw it from a completely different viewpoint than anybody else that I know because it was low. I'm elevated. We were very, very close.
What time of day was this again?
It was probably about 8 or so. 8 something, 8:15, 8:30, something like that. I should have gotten off about 7:30, but then the nurse was late, and plus I was slow in traffic. I was at the best place I could possibly have been to get to see that. It was like hitting the lottery. What a
Uh,
marvelous experience that was.
yeah, that really is like hitting the lottery. That's awesome. So I don't know if you want to talk about it, but were there any kind of communications between you and this thing other than the feeling?
I don't I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's what I'm conscious of. I am and it was like a wave. I could feel it, not just inside. It was like a radiation of warmth, and I could almost feel it physically too. Just the most wonderful, gracious feeling of peace and contentment. And it stayed with me. It stayed with me. And I catch myself again. I just sit here at home at night and I'm smiling, smiling for no reason at all. And it's just, what was that? I have yet to talk to anybody else that had anything like that. So, a lot of people thought it was cool, and a lot of people just saw lights. They didn't see the craft, and
Y-
I
Yeah.
don't, I don't know. I don't know why didn't anybody else see the lava, and why did only one other person see these waves? And from a distance, I could see them coming and going, and people around me that saw it within maybe a few minutes of when I saw it, never reported seeing that at all. And
Mhm.
this colorful mist was putting off a glow too. I mean, it wasn't like it was in the dark. It was like it was illuminated. There was the light from the colorful mist behind the craft, and then the lava stuff dripping down. And as it went out of sight, it was still dripping. Why didn't other people see that? I don't know.
And so by this time you had already had a lot of experiences seeing like spirits and things like that, right? So maybe they couldn't see that because they just weren't able to. Maybe this was some kind of etheric thing that only you and people who have
I,
similar abilities could see. I don't know.
that's a good point. That is a good point because Um, I have always seen spirits, and I was brought up that way. My grandmother used to, when I was a little boy, 4 or 5 years old, my grandmother was teaching me how to communicate with spirits. So I've been raised by my grandmother and my parents. We would sit around the dinner table and talk about different things that we saw. So I was brought up being very, very open to not only this world, but the next world.
Did she teach you like actual techniques or was it more just a belief system?
We had um, what was it, the situation? She would always tell me if I wanted to communicate with a spirit, she would say, never use your voice. Because when you use your voice and talk to a spirit, it disrupts its ability to manifest in the physical world. And she would say, don't even think in words if you want to talk to a spirit. And I'm like 4 or 5 years old. She's teaching me this. And she says, send a feeling to it, send an image, send a mood to it, and wait for it to respond back. We had a spirit in our backyard. I grew up with my parents were in college, so I stayed with my grandmother out in the middle of nowhere in southern Ohio. We had no indoor plumbing and chickens running around the yard and all this stuff. But in 1942, my it would have been my grandmother's brother-in-law who was working on the roof, fell off the roof and died in the backyard. And I would see his spirit at that same place. And he kept saying the same thing over and over and over again because he was waiting for his brother to come home, my brother Roy. And he would say, when Roy gets home, he'll know what to do. Well, years and years later, I'm still seeing him. And I would go up and talk to him, and he would just ignore me. And my grandmother said, "Well, don't use your mouth. Just send a feeling to him and wait for the feeling to come back." And my parents were into meditation groups back in the 1960s when I was in grade school. So off we went. They took me to psychics and mediums and different classes when something spiritual would come through Ohio. Ohio isn't like a big hot spot for spiritual awareness. So whatever happened, we'd get in the Volkswagen or the station wagon, and off we'd go and attend all these meetings. So I had a wonderful supporting family, and seeing what's more than the physical. Yeah.
Remember you were talking about seeing Civil War soldiers, which relates to one of my last guests who actually takes photography of these soldiers and catches them on photographs, which I thought was amazing.
The uh, I don't know why there were Civil War soldiers in Southern Ohio. Kind of got a little bit of an answer later on, maybe, but we lived out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm like 5 years old. My grandmother's 70, and we were on a gravel road. And almost every single time when these soldiers went by the house, my grandmother knew in advance when they were coming. And she would say, they're coming, get ready, go get on the porch swing. And my grandmother comb her hair and put her teeth in and put some lipstick on, try to make herself presentable. Because she wanted to pay homage and honor to these soldier boys. And this is back in the late 1950s, very early 1960s. I saw them about 50 different times. And we'd hurry up and get in the swing. Usually they came around between 2 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And sometimes at night I'd hear them. And we'd hear people walking down the hill and kicking up rocks in the gravel road and mumbling and talking back and forth to each other. And pretty soon here would come about 30 or so Civil War soldiers and they were in blue. So they were Union soldiers, and they were like young boys, like teenage boys, maybe up to 20, very young looking and dirty and disheveled. A couple had guns, most didn't have guns. Their uniforms were torn, and they were absolutely 100% solid. And sometimes I would run up to the edge of the road and try to invite him in because I'm out here in the middle of nowhere with my grandmother. I wanted playmates. I would say, we got some peanut butter. You would come in, have a sandwich. We had a TV. We got one channel. I said, you want to watch TV? Would you like to, can I get you some water? And they wouldn't pay any attention to me, and they would talk to each other and I could clearly hear their voices, but for some reason I couldn't understand what they were saying. And some would be single and some would be in a couple in a group, and then there'd be some straggling, maybe about 30 or so. And then they'd walk in front of the house, and we had a little bridge, and then they would go up over behind the barn and then up over the next road, and they'd be gone. And my grandmother said, well, let's go have some supper, or let's, watch TV. That's it. They're gone. We got to see them. And I just didn't think anything of it. And it happened again and again and again. And it was exactly the same thing. They were doing the same thing. And sometime at night, we'd have the screens in the window, and I would hear the rocks starting to kick at the top of the hill. And then I'd hear them talk, and I could recognize the tone of their voices, but not what they'd say. And they'd do it again, just walk in front of the house and then go up and disappear over the next hill. And years later, I was watching a documentary on the Civil War, and it said that after the Civil War, the there was no way to get the soldiers back home if they were down south, like in Georgia or whatever, to get the Northerners back because the horses were shot, the railroad was blown up, so they had to walk home. And the documentary said that many of the soldiers that survived the war did not survive the walk home. So I always wondered, is that what this was? Was this the spirits of the Civil War soldiers still trying to get home? Other people say there's a thing, kind of, it's like a memory, and I didn't feel a whole lot of a presence with these boys. They looked so solid. They looked so real. But I just wonder if it's something, maybe an astral body that stays on, maybe soul's gone on, but it still could have a learning, a lesson that that soul needs to have, even though it may not be soul itself. It's still something that, what for whatever reason, the universe really doesn't, I don't believe, makes mistakes. something's going on. It needed our attention. My grandmother showed them respect. She got to put her teeth in, some combed her hair, and we went out there and honored them every single time. And how did she know that they were coming? And I don't know. This was just so normal that yeah, I didn't think to ask. It's just like, oh, here they come, there they go. She'll tell me next time, and we do the same thing again and again and again.
So was it the same guys over and over, or was it same dudes?
Same ones, same ones. And they were always in the same position. They were the same little groups. They all looked exactly the same. And I would get so close to them. So I would be like a couple feet from them because I wanted to play. And I could see their boots, the toes of their boots were bent up because they had been soiled and wet and didn't dry properly. And they would have holes and tears in their uniforms. And I've seen reenactments of the Civil War, and the fabric that these boys wore, it was a much thicker fabric. It was a totally different fabric than a reenactment. And they were soiled, and they were so young looking. And if I could draw some of their faces. I can see it so clear today. And I never went up and touched them, because you just don't do that. But I wonder what would have happened if I did. You just keep your hands to yourself.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. So you mentioned the kicking up of the rocks. Were these actual physical rocks, or was just the sound of kicking up rocks?
See, I wonder. It looked, I mean, I could, because you can't go up and down the gravel road. There was, without kicking up rocks. There was a lot of rocks, and like once a year or so, the county would throw down new rock on the road. So it sure looked like it was physical rocks being kicked. Because why would spirit be knocking rocks or have spirit rocks? So I do believe, and at night to hear that, to hear the rocks kicking up, I bet it was physical rocks. I wonder if I could have touched them. I don't know. I haven't been back, and in fact, I was planning to go back last year for it was the 50th high school anniversary, and there was complications with that, and I didn't get to go. But I wanted to go back. I don't even know if the farm's still there, but to see if those soldier boys, ever made it home. Poor little things. I just send them love. And I hear people say now and then, um, when you see a spirit, they're trapped and they need to be released. And per my parents and per my grandmother, you don't do that. It's not your place to decide somebody else's spiritual lessons that they need to learn, or their spiritual growth, or the experience that they're having, either in the body or out of the body. So we would just send them love and let them decide if they want to accept that love or reject it, or put it in storage and pull it up later. um, I think soul needs to grow, unfold, and evolve in its in its own way for the lessons that particular spirit needs to have. And it's not our place to decide that someone needs to be freed or released or sent on. Uh, Allow that spirit to have the freedom to have its own experience and its own lesson in its own way. And just as you would anybody else. You just go out and tell people what to do. You don't tell spirit either. So
Yeah, I think you might be right. A guest I just had on, Barry Strom, was talking about that, and I think he was saying that, they chose to be there. They're with their friends, they don't want to go back. They're hanging out.
and for whatever reason, they're getting something out of this. There's some and just because now this the Civil War would have been over about 95 years by then, because that was like what 1865, and this was happened about 1960, 1959, 1960. So that could just be a second or two to them. It's nearly 100 years to us. So so who knows? Who knows? Just there's no rush. I don't think anybody that gets there first, gets a big prize. I think eventually everybody makes it. Everybody makes it to that spiritual light. I've seen so much of it. And being a hospice nurse, 17 years I did hospice, and I saw some of this the patients. I saw some of them spirits before and after they died, and it's just a what an incredible experience that was. I went bedside for 3,600 deaths. That I was with 3,600 people as they took their last breath, and sometimes it happens at the moment of death, but sometimes it happens way before. Sometimes they just, they're leaving, they're like, "I'm out of here. This is just chemistry going on. This is just physiology, and, the spirit's not a attached to the body that much." So anyway,
No,
I
I
get off
feel
the
like,
subject.
yeah, it sounds like you're the perfect guy to have as a hospice nurse, to be honest. I mean, someone who can see all this stuff and who's loving and caring and gets it, you know? So it's like, yeah, that would be, I'm sure that those 3,600 people were very grateful. Um, so you want to talk about that a little bit, the hospice experiences?
Sure. Um, One of my first hospice experiences was, during the AIDS crisis. And, back in the late 70s and 80s and 90s, uh, there was absolutely no cure. There was not even a treatment for it. It was just a death sentence. And I was a nurse and working in the hospital, and nurses were allowed to refuse caring for an AIDS patient back then because of religious beliefs. So those of us that would take care of them, where we normally should have five patients, we have like 8 or 10. It was like, oh my God, it was so hard to do. But those of us that would, we stepped up to the plate. We did whatever we could to take care of our patients. Well, somebody, an architect, um, took over a closed nursing home, been closed for years, and turned it into an AIDS facility. We didn't know what we were doing. And nobody knew anything about administration, but I was like one of the first nurses to be hired. And we started out really slowly, trying to figure out how to, be legal with the state and do this, that, and the other. But we started with one patient, and we started taking more and more and more on. And I worked night shift. I was the night charge nurse, and we'd get one or two or three patients to start out, and then they die. And I'd get a call saying, "Don't come into work tonight. Everybody's dead." And what a phone call that is to get. And then we'd get a few more patients, and we did everything we could to keep these people comfortable. And then all once they die, and it'd be the next thing you call. I slept all day and I'm ready to come into work at night. It's like, don't come into work. Everybody's dead. And I think if I ever write a book, that's going to be what the title. Don't come into work. Everybody's dead. Those words still echo in my mind hearing that. These lovely, wonderful people we had. So many of them were so much younger than I was, but we would get some that were older people that maybe had a blood transfusion. And it was just horrible how society just rejected them. And we had a front porch, and sometimes we'd go out there in the middle of the night, maybe to get some air or something, and somebody would have dumped a couple patients on the sidewalk with their things around them or on our front porch. They wouldn't even knock on the door to let us know that they were just dumping people off. And we'd have to pick them up and carry them in, and we put them in a bed, and we took care of them, and we gave them medicines, and oh, what a marvelous place that was. Um, we had this one guy, one of the first guys that was there. This was kind of this one was a little odd. It was a little scary. He did not want to die. He fought it. He fought it as hard as he could. And we had one medicine, it was called AZT, that I think was lethal, but who knew? I mean, it's the only thing we had, we gave it to him. And the morphine just flowed like wine. We just kept everybody comfortable. Well, this one guy, finally he died, and he fought. It was horrible to watch him try to hang on and hang on, but he finally died. And the next night, There was nobody in that room. We had stripped the bed. It was just um, uh, an electric hospital bed with a mattress on top of it. And I'm going down the hallway, and I'm hearing bang, 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 bang. I'm thinking, what is that? I thought maybe someone was outside banging on the door, but the door is unlocked. And I went by, and it was coming by the room where this guy had just died in the day before. And I'm standing there in the hallway, and I'm looking in the room, and there's his bed, and his mattress is bouncing up on top of the bed like somebody's hitting it with the fist. And I just thought that was a little scary. That's about the only time something spirit scared me. And I just sent him love. It's like, hey, it's me. I was with you yesterday. Um, just letting you know you're okay. Just letting you know that I care about you. And it went on for a few more minutes and then it stopped. So what was that? I don't know. Was that him? Probably thousands of people died in every one of these rooms over the years that it was a nursing home. I don't know who it was, but whoever it was, I just sent him love. And we would have hallways where we never had patients yet, and we'd hear women calling out, nurse, nurse. And we would see uh, women, mostly women in robes, blue or red robes, walking up and down the hallways. You could see right through them. There was a lot of spirits there, but it never scared anybody. We just kind of thought, we're going to take care of our patients, and then we'll take care of you too, to the spirits. The other nurses were just right in tune with this too. And we just sent everybody love. I mean, other than that guy or somebody bouncing, you know, their fists on the bed. That was the only scary thing that ever happened there. We had so many spirit stories. And I had one, hopefully, I'm not talking too much here.
No, you're good.
This was, oh my God, this was so amazing. Um, every day on my way to work, as soon as I get up, and all my thoughts, words, and actions are done in the name of spirit. And I always this is like my little prayer I say in my little meditation when I wake up. All of my thoughts, words, and actions are done in the name of spirit. Use me in any way you see fit, because you see from a higher level than I do. And I trust spirit, and I just say, use me. I'm glad. I'll do whatever you want, because I know spirit sometimes needs hands and feet and a mouth too, here on the physical, to express itself through. So I was working night shift at the AIDS unit, and we had a nice, beautiful hand carved front door, and it was always open, because sometimes visitors or patients would get scared at night, and they would want visitors to come spend the night with them. Nighttime's very scary when you're a terminally ill patient. There's something relaxing and peaceful when the sun comes up, and a lot of them, their family members work throughout the day, so we had no visiting hours. It was 24/7. So I'm in the office, the nurse's station. I was doing some paperwork, and I heard the door open, and here comes this woman with this huge platter of cookies. I mean, it was like a stack of them, and they smelled wonderful. I mean, she went by. I was like, oh my God, I got to get one of those big chocolate chip cookies. And yeah, I'm looking back at my paperwork. It was like screaming in the back of my head, saying, stop her, stop her, stop her, stop her, stop her. And I'm looking around thinking, what's that? Who's saying that? So I just kind of ignore it. And the next thing I know, I'm standing. I did not willfully use my legs or my hands or anything to stand from a sitting position to stand, but all at once I'm standing, like something just grabbed me and put me on my feet. And I'm hearing, stop her, stop her, stop her, stop her. And it's like, well, okay, who? What do you want me to do? My legs, without me willfully doing it, are walking. I am walking around the desk. I'm walking across the nurse's station. I'm going down the hallway, and I'm following this woman. She was a big woman with a big tray of cookies. And I speed up and speed up and speed up. And she's going into one of the first patient rooms. And I get right in the doorway, the door frame, and block her from going in the room. And she's looking at me very indignantly, just staring at me. And she's big. And at the time, I was a real skinny little thing. And she easily could have knocked me out of the way. And she's tried to push me to get into this room. And we had a patient and his wife was visiting him right there. And as she's pushing me, which I would easily fall off to one side from her, I felt like a warm wall appear behind me. And this would be in a door frame. And she couldn't budge me. And she's pushing and pushing and pushing. In fact, her face is right next to my face. I could smell her makeup. I mean, we're like eyeball to eyeball. And she's shoving me, trying to get around me. And something is suspending me, keeping me from backing up or falling down or falling to the sideway. And I could feel a warm, flat wall, and there's nothing there. And she keeps shoving. And four patients, visitors, and some employees are now gathering in the hallway and seeing her shoving me, uh, trying to get by to give these people some cookies. I I don't know why I was stopping it, because that would have been very nice. Everybody, needed a nice little treat, and what a lovely thing, especially for people that are a social outcast. How nice for someone to have baked cookies. I couldn't explain it. I had to stop her, and something wasn't allowing me to allow her through. So finally, she quit. She gave me the tray of cookies. She goes, "Well, you pass them out," and she walked and went out the front door. And we had a big trash can because AIDS patients all had a lot of GI problems. So they were all in adult diapers, and we would change constantly and throw them in this big dumpster. And I went up to it and I dumped all the cookies on top of all these dirty diapers. People are screaming at me. It's like, what the heck are you doing? And I kept saying, I have no idea. This isn't me. Something's taken over. I can't explain it. So everybody's mad at me. One of the nursing assistants takes the trash can of the dirty diapers and puts it in our director's office the next day to get me in trouble for what I did. And when I came to work the next day, I did get in trouble. And I said, I can't explain it. Something took over my body and didn't allow this woman to distribute all these cookies. And I can't explain it. And they were very upset with me. But we had a police officer or a sheriff um, whose son died of AIDS would come in and volunteer. And he knew me and he knew I wouldn't deny anybody a little bit of pleasure. And he heard about this. So he went to and I didn't know this at the time, he went to the director's office and retrieved the cookies and he took them to a lab. And I wasn't fired, but everybody's mad at me. And a couple of weeks later, they get the results back from the lab, and all the cookies were poisoned. And it was someone that came in, wanted to kill all of our AIDS patients, plus any of us that would have eaten it, we would have died. It was actually, she had used ground up light bulbs. And per our medical director, it would just lacerated our esophagus, our stomachs, our intestines, and there'd be no treatment whatsoever.
And
So,
this was the big lady?
yes,
What?
yes. So she came in to murder everybody, to kill everybody. So it was like, I knew nothing about that. I had no, it wasn't me doing this, but I totally believe it was spirit. And because I have opened myself up again and again to spirit use me, it finally said, okay, put your money where your mouth is. We're using you, and used me to actually block this woman. So I thought about that for so many years. And about 20 years later, I was in my living room and just happened to be looking at the windows in my living room. I think I had just gotten up or something. And I saw these outlines. I saw these out. I saw the outlines of a couple dozen people standing there. And it was like light was shining down on them. And I could just see that like a glow around their heads and the top of their heads and down the side of their faces and their shoulders. And they were just standing there. I couldn't make out their faces, but I could see them. I could see them physically. with my eyes. And I just got this incredible feeling. And to put it into words, it would be like we were there to die, not be murdered. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing.
It took 20 years to finally come to terms with all that, that they knew. There's some of them that maybe held a grudge against me for not letting them have a cookie. They knew there was that was so healing. And then they just sort of faded away, and that was that. That was marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. What an experience to have. The gratitude, and there's more gratitude. I think spirit comes through feelings more than words. And I know so many religions, you study somebody else's, some ancient person's spiritual experiences. Well, the universe is ready for us to have our own right now. At any time, you can touch in with that universal force. And all you got to do is just remove anything that's blocking you from it. There's no blocks between spirit and us. But I think a lot of times that the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, it's waiting for us to step up to its level more than it stepping down to ours. And I think every now and then it gives you a little glimpse of something, gives you a little mood, a little feeling, some little odd coincidence or something to let you know that it's there. And it whispers. It does simple little things. And what happens when someone whispers is you lean closer. What was that? What'd you say? And the closer you lean to it, you know, the more you're in proximity with it. And rarely does spirit hit you over the head. Every now and then it does. But the more you lean into it, I think the more you're open to it, and the more you're willing to become a part of it, I think you're just going to have more and more experiences. And again, all you got to do is remove the clutter. There goes my speaker. Remove the clutter that you yourself have blocked up, stacked up, separating you from that light. And that's my feeling. That's what I've learned. It's simple. And then there's thousands of books written about God and the universe and spirit, but I think it comes down to just a few little sentences. God, we exist because we're loved, and that's about that. That's about it. Keep it simple. Have your own experiences. Welcome the universe into your life, and see what happens. And pay attention. Yeah,
I think you're so right about that. We make it complicated, don't we?
yeah. But there's
And
so
if you,
many distractions. There's so many different things to look about, to focus our attention on, and they're all illusions. And as long as you put your attention on something that's temporary, and especially in this world and in this life, so much of it is very temporary, and you focus more on that which is eternal. Um, it responds. Yeah. So anyway, that was an absolutely wonderful experience. Uh, that they bothered to come back and let me know. They all those spirits, they came back and touched in. Wow, what an honor! What an absolute honor! Nursing has been one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I'm so glad. And it was interesting. I just recently retired, and I was going to retire in 2020, but then COVID hit. And I was working part time still in the emergency room at 68 years old. I mean, that was tough. I was doing a full time job doing desk work, but I still was in the ER. And the horrible things that went on during COVID. And it kind of hit me. My grandmother, who was born in 1889, was a nurse during the Spanish flu, about that would be 1918, 1920. So 100 years later, I'm taking care of COVID patients and as a nurse. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that until after I retired. Anyway,
yeah, that's a very interesting synchronicity there. And yeah, I mean, just to touch on what you just said, that story, we can all experience it just listening to you talk about it, how amazing it is. But I think it's things like that that are the real, the treasures in life, not the things, and the accomplishments and stuff. It's helping an individual person that may not even remember you in this lifetime, so that's amazing.
Yeah. Those were my AIDS patients, and I never saw their faces when they came back, but I felt them. I felt who they are, and the feeling, I interpreted it into words what they the feeling that they sent. But again, it was gratitude. They came back after all these years, which again for them could be just a second. But I was in receptive mode, and what a marvelous experience that was. And they understood. That was I I kind of felt bad that some of them thought I was being mean and denying them a cookie. And I certainly would have eaten a couple too. They were just monstrous, wonderful cookies. I can see why everybody wanted one. Spirit had another plan, and though they died one way or the other, whatever experience that they needed to have in their deaths, murder wasn't one of them. And I always wondered if they ever found that woman. I never did hear. And I've certainly looked around to see if I saw her. And maybe someone gave her cookies and said, "Here, go give them." Maybe she was innocent. Maybe she didn't know. I don't know. I don't know. There was a police investigation, and but I never heard of any follow up. Um,
Well, I'm glad she didn't pull that off, and I hope she reconsidered after that because that's a lot of karmic debt to deal with.
yeah, at least there was an intention by somebody. So it, even though it didn't pan out, they certainly had a negative intention. And then after a couple of years, the AIDS facility was open for 3 years, and we just completely ran out of funds, and unfolded. And what a shame! What a wonderful group of people we had. It's an absolutely marvelous place. And then I went on to another 10-bed adult hospice. Um, I had one particular patient that showed me her soul before and after death. Would you like me to tell that?
Oh, absolutely.
Have time? Um, it was a 10-bed adult unit. And then later I worked 5 years in a 10-bed pediatric unit where we had newborn birth defects up to 17-year-olds. But this one was an adult inpatient unit. And I came in, and as I come into work, I can feel, even I don't know who the patients are if I've been off for a couple of days, I can feel what the patients are going to need. I can feel if somebody's got like some family issues with loved ones, and I can feel someone's not getting enough pain medicine or needs reposition. I can feel before I get there what I need to do. And when I take care of my patients, whether they're responsive or not, I go in and introduce myself, and I talk to their body and I talk to their spirit and let them know. Yeah, I always said, my name's David. I'm the best nurse in the state of Arizona. That's just kind of a little fun thing I say to them. And it's like, I'm going to take such good care of you today. I'm going to come in and check on you. I'm going to keep you medicated. You're going to be comfortable, clean, and dry. And you got the best nurse in Arizona caring for you. And it's just kind of a rapport I have, whether they can hear or respond or not. Well, there was this woman, and I went into her room, and for some reason, I was so attracted to her. There was just something, like we're buddies, like we had known each other for years. And I kept looking at her name. I don't recognize her at all. She didn't look familiar. I have no idea there was any connection. So she was non-responsive, and went through and cleaned her up and repositioned her and gave her medicines. And I would go through all 10 of my patients and do that, do a little charting, and then go back and take care of all 10 of them again. Well, I had just taken care of this one woman, and somebody down the hall needed something extra. So as I'm heading down the hallway to take care of this other lady, and I'm going down the hallway, and I look in each room, checking on the patients, make sure that everything's okay. And I go by this one woman's room. again, who is non-responsive, and she's sitting up at the side of the bed. The side rails are down. She's sitting up, and her legs are hanging down over the side of the bed, and she's looking at me and smiling. And I look at her and smile back. Oh, you're looking good. And I go down the hallway, and I stop, and I think, wait a minute, what's she doing sitting on the side of the bed? She's in a coma. So I'm taking my steps backwards. I was like, what did I just see? And I looked in her room, and she's back in bed, non-responsive, kind of struggling with her breathing. The side rails are up. And just seconds before, she was like a third of her age, looking gorgeous and sitting on the side of the bed. So I thought, oh my God, you just showed me your soul. I just saw your soul. And then it hit me when I saw her sitting at the side of the bed. She had two legs. And when I had just taken care of her 20 minutes before, she only had one leg. One of her legs had been amputated a long time ago. And I thought, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you for showing me your soul. You're like, it's like the a butterfly coming out of the cocoon and stretching out its wings and getting the wings dry and ready to fly off. And I said, well, thank you so much for showing me this. Definitely go. You're ready. Let's, move on when you're ready. So I took care of her the rest of the shift, and I kept peeping in, and my staff kept looking to see if they could see her sitting on the side of the bed. But for the rest of the shift, she was just this old lady laying in bed. So I go home that night, and I told the oncoming shift what I saw, and they're seeing stuff too. They thought that was really cool. So I go home, and I go through the front door, and I'm going down the hallway, and there she is standing in my hallway. And she looked like she was maybe, 28, 29, 30. Her hair was done, it was nice and wavy. She was in this beautiful little kind of a light gown and just beaming, smiling at me in the hallway. And I'm just sitting here, all this love, and I'm feeling all this love. And I keep saying, thank you, thank you, thank you for showing me this. What a wonderful gift you gave me. And then she faded away. So I go to the phone and I call work. I say, you need to go check on the lady in room two. I think she just died. And they said, well, we just came out of the room. No, she's still here. She's not doing well, but she's still here. And I said, no, really, go look. So they put the phone down, they go in the room, they come back. You're right. She had just died. So I saw why this woman shared this with me. I don't know, but she showed me herself as soul before and after her death. And I have told that everywhere I've worked, every time there's a new employee, I eventually end up telling them, this story. I have told this so many times. What an absolutely wonderful thing that this woman did for me, and why me. I'm sure she had friends and family she could have appeared to. I don't know why a stranger, but what a blessing that was. I think of her almost every single day. What a wonderful gift she gave me.
That's
It's
really amazing. Yeah. Well, I mean, so you're there with them in the last days, and maybe they've been forgotten by a lot of people or something like that. I'm sure that happens all the time. So it's almost like, I mean, you're like their real friend in that last moment. So I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure they're very grateful.
Yeah, yeah. For whatever and maybe again, who knows why spirit does what it does. But for me, getting to have that experience, I have shared that with so many people, and I'm glad to share it with your audience too. I mean, who knows what good that's going to do, and some relief that I might give other people. What a marvelous experience! What a gift she gave me. Again, this is like winning the lottery. You know,
It
Who'd you
really
know?
is. Well,
Yeah.
the one of the reasons why I started listening to shows like the one I'm doing now is because I've had my own issues, chronic illness and all this other stuff. And stuff like this gives you comfort. It helps you understand that like there's a reason for all this suffering and pain and maybe at some point we all have to die. So you have to face that and listening to these stories I think really just helps people. And it's like you're transferring your life experiences onto all of us and we're sort of living it through you. I don't see how anyone could have done your job without having seen the things that you can see. Because I mean, otherwise, like there's so much pain and suffering. Like, how could you justify it? You know?
And I have no reason. People say, why is God mean? And there's this happening to some people and this happens. I have no idea. And that's, you know what? It is so easy to be right all of the time. And I figured this out as a child. If you want to never be wrong, there's the simplest little thing that you just have to do, and you will never be wrong. And that's one, shut your mouth. And two, say, I don't know. That's it. You don't have to have an answer for everything. There's no need to understand everything. Um, who, what, when, where, why. Forget those questions. Open up to spirit and just feel, and let it reveal what it knows you're ready for. So people say, so why is there pain and suffering in the world? I can tell you with 100% accuracy, I don't know. It's not my place to answer. I don't know. I, if and when that's revealed to me, I'll be glad to share it. But at this point, I don't know. I can take care of what's presented before me in my life, and I've buried my children, and I've buried my spouse and my parents. I've buried everybody. And once you've buried your children, I mean, everything else is easy after that. So I find the more I and somebody told me this once when I was a kid, and it didn't make sense, but I quickly learned that they were absolutely right. The more you want to receive, the more you need to give, because the universe doesn't come down to you, it flows through you. Spirit comes through, and it's the generosity. If you get out of your own way and let that generosity and the love of the universe come through your life, and you give and give and give, more is revealed to you from something that's eternal, not necessarily, physical rewards, but like an awareness and love and a peace of mind. So, I don't know if any of that makes any sense, but to give to my patients, and I would knock myself out, and making sure that, you know, even though they're laying there in bed and not saying a word, I took such good care of them. And that's like I could feel this energy coming through me. It wasn't coming from me to them. It was like coming from that divine source through me and out to them. And I totally feel I have been so blessed. I have been so uplifted. I have been so happy throughout my life. And it's by giving. You give so much, you give so much love, you become a magnet for love. And it's not just necessarily people around you, but you can feel it from that divine source. It's simple. It's simple. The more you give, get out, remove the roadblocks that stop you from loving, remove the old hurts and beliefs and things that people told you when you were 3 years old and you've been hanging on to. Get rid of all that stuff and and just allow the flow to go. That's the natural way. That's what
I,
I Yeah.
I think that's the secret to life right there. Well, I don't have any more questions if unless there's anything else you want to talk about.
I got so many.
I
I got
bet.
so
I
many.
bet.
Yeah. It um well, I just appreciate getting to be on your show and getting to share some of the things that I've learned. And I don't know, maybe we could do a part two sometime.
I don't see why not.
I had a few more non-human encounters.
Mhm.
Um, I've only had four. The Phoenix Lights, and I had a near abduction when I was a child,
Mhm.
and then on camping trips, I ended up seeing what very well could have been aliens or something, and also the children. Okay, we got some time if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we haven't stopped. Let's keep rolling.
Okay, let me tell you about this. Um, one of the hospices I worked for, we got a huge donation, and somebody had lost their children. So they bought this house and donated it to us. So we opened up a pediatric uh, inpatient unit for terminally ill children. And we could take care of 10 children at a time. And we had this huge living room. So the parents would come in or grandparents would come in. We put them in chairs, we put them on the floor, we stuck them wherever we could stick them. But we had a wonderful staff, and we cared for these kids. And a lot of hospitals are they're paid by this rating system. If a hospital has so many people dying in the hospital, because hospitals are supposed to get better, but if so many deaths are in a hospital, the way that they're paid changes. So they want to get people on hospice so they don't die in the hospital, and they do it for financial reasons, and that's kind of sad. But we're hospice, we'll take them, who cares? And there were so many birth defects that we opened up our own pediatric inpatient hospice. And of course I was ready for that. Let's go do this. So we would get a 13-14 year old mother mourning the death of her newborn, her first child born with birth defects, and just tragic stories, one after the other. And all 10 rooms were filled with dying children. And what an incredible experience it was to try to figure out, should you go in and talk to this mother, or should you give her a break? Should you just kind of be available when she needs? You want This is their death. It's not mine. It's the patient's death, not my death. I wanted them to go through their dying experience the way they need to, and also their family members' choice. So sometimes we get very involved, and sometimes we're just available. And you can feel, as I drive into work, I could feel, should I say something? Should I not say something? Whatever. And it was a wonderful experience to take care of these um, terminally ill children and their family members. And um, but one room we had, it had three beds in it, and there were solid walls between each of the beds, but it was open at the foot of the bed. So it was a room with two partitions, three beds, and the nurse, I could stay there at one end of the room, and I could see all three children. And we would put our sickest kids in that one room because I could stay there and take care of all three without running up and down the hallway. And some of our kids are in ventilators, some have drips and drains and all this stuff. But a lot of our kids also, especially ages 8 to 12, would have the kids that were able to speak, the kids that weren't necessarily drugged up. And depending on their diagnosis, I mean, some absolutely required a lot of narcotics and some didn't. So many of our children were actually conscious. And especially in this one room, which was so neat because we would have several children that were responding to what they were seeing at the same time. And they would describe these beings, which I figured were just skinny spirits the children saw. It was later when I heard about alien grays, they would describe these beings as looking like an alien gray. I don't know if they were alien grays. I don't know what they were, but they were about 4 feet tall, kind of a grayish skin, huge eyes, very skinny heads, where alien grays tend to have big fat heads. Very skinny bodies, long arms, long fingers, and they would speak to the children, and the kids would speak back. And especially in this one room where the children didn't interact with each other. I mean, our children can get up and play. I don't think any of our children could walk, but they would look at the same place and respond to what they were seeing in the same place at the same time. And sometimes they would verbally answer whatever this being was saying to the children at the same time. And they would describe these beings exactly the same. And it wasn't just in this room where we had the three children, we had seven private rooms, and the children there would see the same thing. And this is year after year after year. We were open for 5 years. And I don't think any of our children lived more than 2 weeks. So we would get them right towards the end of their lives, and we would move their parents and everybody else in. So several times, the children in the same room would say the same thing to the bee at the same time. And it would sound like be, no, ma, ta, le, ma, ke, pa, like that. It's not a quote, but that's what it sounded like. And they were repeating what this invisible being was saying to them at the same time. And they couldn't see each other or hear each other because there was a solid wall in between the children. And they would draw them the same way. And I couldn't see them. And I've seen so many things throughout my life. And I would sit there and just like say, please let me see you once. I would love to see what the children were seeing. And they just ignored me. They never did. They never did touch it. And I didn't get a feeling from them. I didn't get a feeling like when there's a spirit, I can generally feel it. And these things, I didn't feel anything. And some of our children were absolutely terrified of them. I would hide from them and scream. And the other kids loved them, but then a lot of the children were afraid of me because I had the needles and I had the nasty, tasty medicine. So were they afraid of these beings because there was something absolutely horrible to a reason to be afraid of, or were they just afraid? I don't know. And I kind of had to watch what I asked the children about them because if their parents were there, I didn't want to freak the parents out. So oftentimes when I was in the room, the parents would take a break and go stretch their legs or go to the restroom or get something to eat. So then I was privy to be with the child alone and I was able to talk to him. And this went on again and again and again and again. And somewhere I probably have some of the sketches that some of them drew. Some of the nurses we had were very traditional religions, um, faith backgrounds, and then they would take the sketches that the children drew and they would add wings to them and a halo. And they say, "Oh, look, the children are drawing angels." Well, they never used that term angel, and they didn't have wings, and they didn't have a halo. But that was important for those nurses to validate their own religion. It later closed down. It's all gone. Were they beings that just came to children? Because I never heard an adult ever see anything like this. Adults would see past loved ones and other adults and sometimes some animals. Um, Children didn't. Children were seeing these things again and again. So was it something that the children saw because they were terminally ill, or maybe it was something in that land? Maybe I don't know. It's the building. Everything's gone now, and I think it's a house now. What's going on? And after I left, after it closed, I did 5 years of pediatric burn, and we lost a lot of our kids there. Unfortunately, they were on so much narcotic for pain control. Who knows what they were seeing? So I don't know. I have no idea what they were, but
Yeah, well, it's possible that maybe they were well, so there were certain parts like of the world, like Skinwalker Ranch and things like that, where maybe I think and you actually talked about this in one of your other videos because you met those mantis beings at the in Mesa or wherever it was. Maybe they just hang out there or something. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, it could just be the location. Um, I've talked to other people that were in hospice, and they've not had these experiences where the children saying that they were seeing these things. And it wasn't just the kids saying it to me, the other nurses, they were seeing it to them too. None of the nurses saw them, but the children again and again and again over 5 years. And the kids didn't live that long, so they couldn't have passed this on. Were seeing and describing and drawing the same thing. I don't know. And I've looked online. I can't find anybody drawing anything like him, except for an alien gray, but squished heads. The head was really thin, and grays are plump. So I don't know. I don't know what they were. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of stuff out there that, well, we try to put them all in categories, right? Like the grays or the avians or whatever. There's probably thousands of these things.
And
Um,
and for hospice, I mean, it was interesting. The adults didn't see them, though we didn't have adults really in this unit. Now and then we would get, if we had an empty bed, we would take an adult. They never once mentioned seeing anything like that.
yeah, that's really interesting. So you mentioned a lot of the people you worked with also saw some of this stuff. Now, were most of them okay with it, like you were, or were some of them not okay with it?
We lost a lot of staff. We went through a lot of staff, and it's interesting. You really have to be involved to be a hospice nurse. And I think people romanticize it, and you think you got to sit there and hold someone's hand while they die. Well, pretty soon their hands are sweaty, and you've got people falling out of bed, and you got people vomiting blood, and I mean a lot of it's not necessarily all that pretty, depending on what they've got going on there. Um, so we went through a lot of staff. It just was just too much for them to take. And we had some that we had volunteers, and they would see something. They would see like the shadow of somebody walking down a hall and then disappearing. And then that volunteer's out the door. Never see them again. So we would kind of laugh. It's kind of like that was our little bit of humor.
So it seems like some of them see you, some of them don't, some of them you can communicate with, some of them you can't. I wonder what that's all about.
Yeah. And again, forget who, what, when, where, why. Just allow it to be, with no judgment. And we don't need to understand why for many things. Sometimes just being present and just being conscious and just sending that love. That's it. It's the universal flow. And again, it doesn't come to you, it comes through you. Keep it at the experience that you have and just be grateful. Just be grateful you saw it. Have you seen anything?
Only in the astral state.
Uh-huh.
So, not in my waking life. I've never seen anything in my waking life. So I'm okay at astral projection. And
Uh-huh.
then of course, it's not really the same thing, but I have a lot of communication through dream work. That's sort of my vehicle of communication.
Sure. Sure. Because that vibrations may be closer with the infinite. Right. You work through that. Do you meditate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so okay, well, in the only thing that I really get in my waking life would be like downloads that are sometimes auditory,
Mm-hmm.
and then like um if I'm around somebody, it's like I feel who they are. Like, it's like I know who they are, but it's feeling. How do I describe it? It's like a snapshot of their life in a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like I'm them for like a split second. And in that split second, I get information about like maybe what they're feeling or who they are, how they've lived and stuff like that. So,
So much of this, it's so hard to put into words because it's a feeling and a knowing and a mood that it just touches in that way versus words. Words are brain and thought. And eventually your brains and your body go in the ground. And that which is eternal doesn't necessarily use words and thought and reason and who, what, when, where, why. It just uses a knowingness. And I think the more we step up to that level, the more we get versus waiting for it to step down to our level.
100%.
Yeah.
Um, have you ever seen anything that resembled like a religious angel or something like that?
Mm,
No.
no, never did.
Okay.
Never did.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always wondered where that imagery came from. and I don't know, maybe it's just man-made.
Well, and again, a lot of religion is somebody else's religious experience that they had, 1,000, 2,000 years ago. And people are stuck on that. And and to focus, and that's nice. There's a lot of great wisdom back there, but have your own experience too. Because sometimes I think it just uses what images that we would recognize. And maybe and I've heard different sounds with spirits sometimes too, or felt sounds. And
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe that's the ruffling of wings or feathers came to them, so they assume, spirits have wings like angels. But you know, there's no need to have a wing, if you're not physical.
Right. Yeah. I think it's just maybe like a man-made thing that we're projecting it onto them because they're flying, so they must have wings or something. It's like a metaphor. The only thing I've ever experienced that's like that is like what you would might maybe call like angels singing or a choir or something like that. I've had that many times where like I'm in that astral state and it's as though there's like a choir that's being sung toward into me as
Yeah,
like a maybe a healing or something like that. That's the closest thing I've ever seen to that or experienced.
yeah. And um, in the auditory sound current, my parents were involved in a group called the Radha Swamis and Surat Shabda Yoga, and it focuses on the light in the sound current. And the most important thing was sound. And sound is what spirit uses to travel according to this path. So they would use chants and different things to mock up the universal sound called the Shabda, and it would take you out of the body. But sometimes, we'd have these very deep meditations or out of the body experiences, and it would just be like a single note of something, almost like a chorus holding a note for infinity, or a string like a violin
Yeah.
string playing one note forever.
Have you ever listened to like the solfeggio frequencies, like 528 hertz or something like that, and it's just a pure tone?
No, I've not done that.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like I've heard that just blasted at me. But
Oh,
but I mean maybe that's what that is. You know what I mean? I don't know. It sounds similar to what you were talking about though. That's really cool.
yeah. We used to, and at different levels of awareness, the tone would be different. And then there would be different, like a little wave of color or something, and sometimes nothing. But there would always be that sound current. And as a child, that's what I was taught to focus on this sound current, because that's where the liberation comes from. And
Hmm.
in the old biblical times, they talked about the word. Well, the word is a sound, and the shabda, the audible sound current. Um, it just seems to be uplifting. So maybe it's the same thing you were hearing out of the body.
I don't know. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's really cool though, hearing that they travel with sound. I think because well, my theory is that everything is some sort of frequency or vibration, right? So if you go down to the lowest level, past the molecular level, it's just frequencies and vibrations interacting with each other. So if everything is frequency, then, it would make sense that you could use that for something, whether it's healing or travel or communication or whatever it is. So,
Yeah, it was a Surat Shabda, and then there was a form called Ekankar, which is a very easy path to using the Shabda sound. And lights got wisdom and knowledge, but it's so limited compared to the sound current. And so many of the older religions really focused on sound. Um, so who knows? Who knows? We practiced it when I was a child. I got some great benefits. I think anytime you focus on something that's eternal, something that's non-changing, something that's at a much higher level, it lifts you up to that,
mhm.
and and drop the mind and drop the questions, and drop trying to understand and just become a co-worker with it, become an active participant with that higher level, even without questioning. It's like opening myself up and then throwing cookies in the trash. You know, who knew? David Parker didn't know that. Spirit knew. And it didn't explain to me why. And I kept saying, why am I hearing this? Why am I doing this? Well, it didn't tell me. You don't need to know. It was just do it. So what an experience that was. Just to have chosen and to have been willing to be a participant with the universe with no questions. And I wasn't asking for a paycheck from it. I wasn't asking for answers from it. I just said, use me as you see fit, and it did. And what a great experience that was. And I got so much more out of it 20 years later when all those spirits showed up in my living room. What a wow. If only that happened in my entire life, I would feel I'm one of the luckiest people on earth. And I've had so much more.
Oh, I think you already are.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like an extreme visceral example of what I think. So when people get into like a flow state or something and there's no mind and they're just completely in the zone, it's like God's living through them and they're channeling God into their act. Like sometimes when I'm playing the piano, like I lose track of time and it's just flowing. That's like a very 1% of what you experienced, you know?
It's whatever you use to lift yourself to a higher level. I had something that hit me once. And it was a long time ago as a child. Um, eh, spirit spirit shows me things. I found bodies because I saw the spirits near the bodies, and boy, that
Wow.
caused some trouble. But I'm still being persecuted after 50 years for finding a dead body because I saw the soul. And where was I going to go with this? Oh, and it came to me. And again, spirit doesn't necessarily try to teach me a lesson. It gives me the experience, and I think it lets me figure it out. And I try to figure it out without using brain, but using feeling. But it hit me once that it's absolutely impossible to look down, that soul can only look to God or to the universe. And that's it. It can't look any other way. Uh, if you can only look up to that divine source. And when you see someone way below you, see someone in the gutter, you're actually just below them looking up. And if you see someone as trash or see someone as this thing, whatever, whatever judgment it is that you think you're looking down on that person for their behavior, for whatever actions that they've taken, you're actually just below them looking up. So it behooves you as soul to see everybody as high as you possibly can, to see everybody in that divine light. Maybe they're having, a physical experience that's important for their growth. Try not to have a judgment on that, but see them as soul as high as possible. Because no matter how high you see everybody, you're just below them looking up. And that hit, I was like in high school when that came to me. It's an illusion to look down. You can only look up. So always, always see everybody as high as you possibly can.
That's a brilliant insight and a great way of looking at it. And you never know who they are. I mean, they may have chosen to have a life of difficulty, intentionally, to deal with something or learn or grow in some way. And maybe they're more advanced than us,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. They're just having their experience. May not be pretty in our eyes, but I'm sure you've had things happen to you that you learn the lesson with the best best experience that you learn it from. So I think we're all on the way home. I think we're already probably already there. I think everybody does make it. It's just on the physical. Some people tend look like they're stumbling, but on the spiritual level, we're all up there. And yeah,
Yeah.
we're all
Well,
family.
they,
We're all connected.
yeah, 100%. Man, I feel like I've learned a lot just by listening to you in this conversation here. I'm gonna have to go back and take notes on this.
Well, it's
Um,
been wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to have you on again and talk more about the alien stuff and
Oh, sure.
maybe the body that you found and other things.
Body.
Um,
Yeah, there's been a couple. Yeah.
right. Okay, well, I don't know if you have any like a website or books or anything like that, but is there anywhere that you want to send people?
Well, I have a YouTube channel. I was going to do a cooking show. You know, I was raised out in the farm, and it's Uncle Dave's Kitchen. And I have yet to do a cooking show. I have a friend of mine that does editing for me because I am lost at that. So I'm sharing my spirit stories. You know, my health's changing, and I certainly don't want to leave this world with all these incredible experiences that I have. So I want to share them with other people. So it's Uncle Dave's Kitchen on YouTube.